So, welcome to another installment of Heal the Shadow in Your Relationships Too. And I am so happy to have with me today Suzi Lula. Thanks for being here, Suzi.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. So pleased to be here with you.
Wonderful. So, Suzi Lula is a much sought after spiritual coach, speaker, and a pianist. Based in Los Angeles at the Agape International Spiritual Center, founded by Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. Suzi is a master teacher and teaches at the Agape University faculty, as well as at spiritual conferences and centers throughout the country. She was recently honored by the Centers for Spiritual Living with the Jackie Sorensen Professional Practitioner Award. Congratulations on that one.
Thank you very much.
And since becoming a mother, Suzi has become an advocate for mothers everywhere to thrive, founding the Motherhood Evolution because thriving mothers raise thriving children. She's committed to spreading the conscious parenting movement, which was started by Dr. Shefali Tsabari, who is an Oprah Life class teacher. And Suzi also has 2 piano CDs with an open heart and reflections to inspire deep peace and relaxation, and they have been described as musical poetry. So again, a tremendous pleasure to have you here, Suzi, with us.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
So we are talking about healing the shadow in our relationships, and why is it that you say that challenges in relationships, especially with our children, reflect challenges that we're having within ourselves?
Yes, that is what most parents find. You know, when we begin raising our children and we begin to experience conflict with them, and then we start to try to sort through them, when we really get still and think about it, a challenge that we have outside of ourselves with another individual, any other individual, but especially the ones with our children, can be intensified. You know, it's reflecting and mirroring back some kind of upset, some kind of discomfort, some kind of unfinished business or unresolved issue within ourselves. And the outer conflict, especially with our children, is trying to seek our attention to assist us to come to completion with that material, you know?
Oh, I'm not a mother, but I can so relate to that because it's what comes up with me and my husband,
Exactly.
It comes up with everybody. So it always boils down to our relationship with ourselves, as always.
Very much so.
And you love talking about the shadow. I know we have that in common. We really connected on that. So why is working with our shadow such an important concept for us to get? And you're going to apply it for parents working with their children.
Yes. You know, as you said, it speaks to any of our relationships and all of our relationships. So that's a given. And I do work with parents quite often and children. And the reason why it's so vitally important is because obviously all of us want to experience connection and intimacy. The thing that's most important to us in our life is to be seen by someone else, to feel connected, to feel like we belong, to feel like we're accepted and that there is that intimate connection there. And so we're all seeking the same thing. Mm-hmm. And where I find that the shadow comes in is that in our culture, we're pretty much taught to avoid our shadow at all costs, which is why I so admire and applaud you for the work that you're doing and this vision that you have, because when you think of society in general, we're all seeking to have these deep, rich connections with each other. And yet society is saying, like, don't feel that, like, don't go to the darkness, don't go to the... And so there are parts of us that are fragile. There's parts of us that are vulnerable. There's parts of us that are hurting. There's parts of us that didn't get what we needed growing up. And these are parts of us. And we can't really have a truthful, intimate, authentic, sort of naked relationship with someone else if there's parts of us that we can't even connect to inside of ourselves. And so that's why I'm passionate about it, as are you. And I feel that it's just vitally important to have someone to be a spokesperson, that going to the shadow is rich. It's, it's important. It's important and vital.
Absolutely. Well, of course, the way has been shown by Debbie Ford in a big
Yes.
way. And before her, of course, it was Carl Jung. So we love all of the way showers before us. But it's a timeless message.
Yes.
We can never hear enough about it, just because of the way, like you said, that society has a tendency to tell us, don't go into your darkness, don't look at, well, first of all, we can't even see our blind spots.
Yes, exactly.
And then you certainly don't want to feel the nasty stuff that's behind them, because that's what's keeping it all in place. So tell me, how would you work with that with your clients? How do you work with the shadow? That is a different and unique way of working with the shadow that you do in your particular way.
That's a great question, because I think, and yes, an ode to Debbie Ford and the work that she does and did, and all those, as you said, who have come before us and also do the same work. It's just the numbers of us are important, What I believe is so challenging for individuals, yes, not only are we taught not to, connect with these uncomfortable parts, but then even when we're willing to connect with them, it is challenging to contain them and be present with a part of us that we've either judged or rejected or seen as dark and unattractive. So it is a little counterintuitive to say, let's go into this place that, we've somewhat judged. So the way that I look at the shadow, I call them orphaned parts of ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I literally think of the places inside of myself as these orphans. And I literally think of, a real orphan. It's proven, and research shows that the older an orphan gets, the less likely they are to be adopted. And that's just, it's kind of heartbreaking, right? So you think about an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old who feels unwanted, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think of those places inside of me. There's 8-year-old places inside of me that didn't get their needs met, and that I have orphaned out. I have pressed outside of my own embrace. And so the easiest metaphor and description I can think of is to adopt back the places that I've orphaned out. So I'm all up for adoption, right? We're adopting in. The other way that I work with these parts is that when you think about a real orphan child, what are they seeking? They're seeking love. It's all they want. Any way, shape, form. So this is what then we seek to bring to the orphaned places within ourselves. So let's just bring it down to earth here. Let's just say there's a place inside of me that I have rejected for a long time. Let's say a place inside of me I felt less than, or I felt like, oh, if you really see that part of me, you're really going to run for the hills, Well, that is an orphaned place inside of me. And I'm seeking, I have a saying, the places inside of me that I deem the least attractive are the places inside of me that need my love the most.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Right? So then that very place that I'm afraid, oh, if you see me, I don't want you to see that part of me. Well, that is the very place that needs my love the most. Now, that's a little bit of an art to go there. But if I just to take one more moment, so then what I do once we're willing, we're like, okay, I'm on the path of willingness here. Then what I would do is just ask, and for anyone who's listening now who isn't driving, you may want to even right in this moment, just gently close your eyes. And I find that getting a little altitude is another easier way to love ourselves. So just imagine yourself sitting in the chair that you're sitting in right now. And very gently, just imagine yourself rising up out of your body, and you're looking down at yourself. And you might even see yourself rising high enough that you go above the ceiling in your room all the way up to a mountaintop where you feel The sky is the limit. There's no ceiling on a mountaintop. There's no walls on a mountaintop. The sky is the limit. You're up, 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 and yet you have solid ground underneath you. And you're up there and you're looking down at this vulnerable, fragile part that you yourself have rejected, or you yourself have felt I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. That part of me is, dark or unattractive. So, but from the mountaintop, you're looking down at this place, and you're just literally sort of scooping that place up inside of you, sort of asking. Two great questions to ask yourself would be, what is it that you most need from me right now to feel connected? And or, what is it that you would have most wanted someone to have said to you early on in your life? What is it that would have made a difference to you to have heard? And then you express that willingness to provide that for yourself. And then whenever you're ready, just gently open your eyes.
That definitely brought me near tears because, that question, what would you most love to have heard? Oh my goodness. And I'm sure what came up for me came up for a lot of people out there, because for me it was, I just would have loved to have heard, I love you exactly as you are, and you don't need to be any different. And isn't that what we all really want to feel?
Isn't that what we all really want to feel? So why don't we do this? That's just lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Let's do this. So everyone, just gently close your eyes for another moment. Go back up to the mountaintop and specifically look down to that place that simply just wanted to feel loved and know that you were loved exactly as you are. And in this moment, offer that to yourself right now. Say, I see you and I love you exactly as you are. There is nothing more dignifying or respectful or kind to say to yourself than that. And then whenever you're ready, gently open your eyes.
Yeah, it definitely brought up some stuff there.
Which is exactly what we are intending to do. What that says is that we created a safe space between us for you to go inward. And the quality of safety is so important when we're talking about shadow work, right? Because you're not going to peep out your little head, if you don't really feel safe. So,
right.
So that's
especially the little orphan that feels like it has been disowned for so long, unwanted for so long. How can that side of us feel safe enough to show themselves? So that's a beautiful gift there from working with the shadow. What other gifts come from working with our shadow?
So two things come to mind when you ask that. I think that's such a great question. When we are willing to really do this work, what we find is that there's something underneath the shadow. So we tend to avoid it, but we don't realize when you get to that place that was somewhat vulnerable a moment ago, that place that wanted to know I'm okay exactly as I am, right under that, when you get into that neighborhood and that territory, what you find is, oh my goodness, this shadow has simply been a protection, a little armor to protect a place of me that does know. Deep down, all of us really do know we are whole. We are okay. And there's a place that we've just been protecting it. So one of the just reasons that I'm passionate about this work is because the shadow actually allows us to connect with the place inside of us that is our essence, that is our authentic being, and it's under there just waiting for us. So we don't have to circumvent it. We can go straight through. So that's one of the real, I mean, huge, because again, then that opens us to the second important reason, which is once you experience this inside of yourself, as I'm sure you and everyone listening, if you had a similar experience, you do feel a softening in that moment, right? You felt a softening, like you said, you had a tear.
Yeah.
And when we have that softening, it makes us more available to relationship with others. It's challenging to have that intimate connection when we have a little bit of armor and protection. But when you experience it inside and you have that softening, then it makes you available for the intimate relationships that you're really seeking in your life in general anyway. So it brings us full circle to what we're all seeking.
Yeah.
And then especially with children, because children trigger us. And it's so challenging to turn away from our child and do one of these kind of processes. But when you do, and you feel that softening, you go back to your child and you're able to say, you know, I just want to be close to you, just like you want to be close to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
well, the softening that you're describing, I experience it as an opening of my heart.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Exactly.
that chakra opens up. It just clears up the energy. And like you say, it gets us in touch with our authentic power,
Exactly.
you know, to bring us more of our good. And so you talked a little bit about working with children with this. What are the gifts of the mother where the shadow is concerned?
Well, this is another near and dear to my heart because I have such compassion for mothers, right? We all know, we all hear the saying, mothers are doing the most important work on the planet, right?
Yeah.
And it's a kind of thankless job in the sense that, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
we're getting triggered again and again and again, and we just want to be close to our children. Well, you know, mothers are seeking to mother from a disconnected place inside of ourselves a lot of the time. We've been taught, you know, I have this saying, mothers feel guilty when they take care of themselves, and mothers feel guilty when they don't take care of themselves, right?
Yep.
So we're experiencing this inner disconnection, but yet we're seeking to have this intimate connection with our children. So it's challenging to have a connected experience with your child when we're inwardly disconnected. So I am all about really assisting and being an advocate for mothers to thrive. Because as you said, when we do this work and we get in touch with our authentic gifts and our authentic power, there's a power. I call mothers the untapped spiritual powerhouse of the planet because there is power here that we're disconnected from. There's mother's intuition and that spiritual connection, and we have gifts to bring and to offer, as does everyone. And this shadow work really, as you said, connects us back to the gifts that we have to bring, you know, and our soul is not going to rest until we give the gifts that we came here to give, you know, and that's a good thing, you know, because we want to be giving of our gifts. And this shadow work really assists us to get underneath the places that are blocking our gifts so that we can freely give of our gifts, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're talking about, you know, I so agree with you that mothers are doing the most important work on the planet, truly. So what do you see as the future of motherhood in terms of the shadow? And do you have a vision for that?
I have such a vision. I see mothers globally. I see us connected globally, giving ourselves permission to thrive. And I see mothers globally saying, martyrdom no more, like goodbye guilt, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And by doing this shadow work, what we do is we connect with what you just experienced, an overflow, an opening of our heart. So I say that mothers, you know, Margaret Mead said, you know, it only takes a small group of individuals on the planet to really change a paradigm. Whichever mothers, however many mothers are listening right now, if we all join together and said, you know, no more guilt, goodbye to guilt, martyrdom is not necessary any longer. We are interested in raising our children for being a full being and a being that's overflowing from the inside out. Can you imagine the modeling that a child would see if their parents were full and thriving rather than martyred and self-sacrificing.
Victims, yeah,
Yeah,
coming.
so I go from, self-sacrifice to self-care. There is nothing more important for a mother than self-care. And I consider the shadow work part of my spiritual practice. It's so utterly important to me that part of sitting there and meditating is let me get in touch with these places inside of me that are tender, that are fragile, that are vulnerable, that I haven't wanted to look at. I think that is part of my spiritual work on the planet.
Well, I love that you say that because, yeah, I would love everybody to be doing our shadow work whenever it comes up for us. Because what are our alternatives? You have a trigger, and then what? You're going to stay in that trigger. You're going to be nasty to everybody around you, or you're going to take the victim position. Then you block your good. Then you're not going to get what you want in life. Then you don't have the power to create. I mean, what's the alternative? So, what you do is you got to take care of yourself. You got to give yourself that moment. You got to look inside of yourself. You got to see, this is a side of myself I have to own. I have to love. I have to embrace. When I embrace myself, I have more to give to others and to embrace them with.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I love everything you're saying here, Suzi. It's great stuff.
Exactly. And, again, hats off to you for galvanizing individuals because there's a power in collective consciousness. So you have taken your time and your energy and invested and galvanized people that do this in their life's work. And then also listeners who, I'd love for us to be part of a message that shifts the idea of working with our shadow from distasteful to that actually I seek to do this. Why would I not? My life is so short. Why would I not seek to love every part of me while I am here?
Yeah.
That I might then have that open heart that you're speaking of.
So do you have some specific examples of what you want to bring up, with anything that you talked about here?
Specific examples, meaning of ways that I've
motherhood, the shadow, working with your children, doing this as a spiritual practice, all of that.
So a couple of things, and you can translate it if you're not a parent, translate it into words that work for you, for sure. But, I do this with my son. He's 12 now, and he's just been raised with shadow work,
Woo,
And
powerful boy.
Right? So it started out when he was little. Obviously, I make it, age appropriate. When I would get triggered, because, first of all, anytime we can do shadow work is a good time. So there are moments when maybe we're in public or, there are moments that we feel triggered and we can't just right there go, excuse me, just a moment, let me close my eyes and go to the mountaintop. Probably if we all did that, we'd all be better off.
It would be a better place for sure, yeah.
Let me just go to
I need a shadow break.
Yeah, all right. But this is kind of you're so on my wavelength because this is what I used to tell my son is that, mommy needs a minute here. And instead of putting him in timeout, if I was triggered, I would just go, mommy needs a minute, I'm going to go splash some water on my face. And I would go into the bathroom and sit, on the toilet or on the side of the tub. And I would just do what I needed to do to reconnect within myself. And as my son got older, if he could feel me getting triggered, he would say, Mom, do you need to go take a minute? And it wasn't in a rude way. It was actually in a helpful way. And I would go, you know what? Yeah, And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to own that we're triggered. And many times I have walked in going, yeah, I'm going to go. And I've still been in my ego or my wounded part or whatever you want to call it. And I've stomped away. But, like you said, I soften, I get to the open heart, I come out, let's do a do-over. Another big thing. I'm really into do-overs, with my husband, with coworkers, with girlfriends, it's like, can we do a do-over? Sorry, know?
Yeah, awesome.
And so I'm a real big believer in just calling the elephant in the room, and saying, look, I got to go connect inside or reconnect inside, give me a minute. I'll be right back, or I'll call you back tomorrow. And my son to this day, he calls them mommy minutes, or I use a lot of times I say, go to the mountaintop, wait, got to go up to the mountaintop, but I feel that it's very healthy to name it, you know. And one more thing I'll add quickly is that it works the opposite way around too, because when I model to him that I'm human, I get triggered. I'm not trying to be perfect. I can't be perfect. And he sees me not have to be so defensive about my triggers, then many times, you know, if we start to kind of, you know, be on opposite sides of something, he many times will be the first one to say, Mom, let's take a minute. Let's just take a minute. And it's astounding to come out of a 12-year-old boy's mouth to hear, you know, to say that. And he means it. And I usually thank him very much. Like,
absolutely. Well, you know, I think it's just wonderful to give that as a role model for your children. You know, that if they see mommy taking a minute, they're going to know when they're adults that they can take a minute. They're going to see you going through the process of centering yourself. They're going to see you get bent out of shape, go take a minute, come back, be open-hearted and loving. Yes. And it teaches them in a much more profound way than anything you could say about what they should be doing or any of that, right?
I'd say that I'm doing this in service to whoever he marries. Right? Maybe he'll thank me one day.
Absolutely. Saving him some therapy bills in the future.
Exactly. But, you know, my husband and I also have this saying between us, there needs to be at least one adult present at all times. So if either one of us goes into that place of the shadow, the orphaned places, the wounded places, if either one of us, it saves us from both getting triggered. And we'll just say, you know, not having an adult moment at this time, you know? And so I think that another message that I would so hope that listeners would hear is that, because that makes it even layered when both people get challenged, right? Or both people are rejecting or disconnecting from their own shadow. But when we can own our own and say, you know what, that's a dead end street. Right? At least one adult present at all times. And that goes with my girlfriends, you know, anyone. When I feel that, because when you get into both people into their shadow, it gets a little messy.
It gets totally messy. So I love that, at least one adult present at all times, because otherwise, if both people are getting triggered, and that's usually what happens. One person gets triggered, it sets the other person off.
Exactly correct.
It's kind of inevitable. So somebody's got to wake up and go, okay, I got to be the adult here. And if you have both people setting that intention, then if both people can wake up and let's talk about this, let's work this through, let's take a minute.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think another thing that's so profound that listeners could take away is that I love to encourage my clients, friends, what have you, to talk about shadow work with their partners or with their girlfriends at a time when they're not triggered.
Right.
See, I talk to my son about it at a time when we're not triggered, so that we sort of have our ground rules in place, so that when we do, we have something to lean on. Because I find that it's why I have so much compassion for individuals seeking to do this work, because they're in earnest wanting to do this work and willing to do this work. And what you're talking about is very challenging to when two people are both connected in this way. It's challenging enough to go into our own self. But then when you and your partner, how do you untangle that knot? Yeah. So if beforehand you already had that agreement, look, if I have a meltdown, you don't have to come with me. You know?
Yeah. That was one of the beautiful things about my husband when I first got together with him, and I would have a meltdown. He was the one that was able to take my hand and just go, honey, I think you need to take a deep breath.
Yeah, I love him.
I love him too. So.
My husband says to me, babe, you just wear yourself out.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. So it's like they're trying to help us conserve our energy. So it's a beautiful thing. So Suzi, it's been such a pleasure to have you. You have a free gift for my viewers. And it's a 15-minute guided meditation on abundance. You want to share what that's all about?
again, I will say that it is sometimes challenging for us to sit down and work with ourselves to get ourselves to the place that we are seeking to be in consciousness. And so I love guided meditations because you can pop one in and then someone else is sort of doing the work for you. And so, yes, I have this guided meditation where we do go to the mountaintop and look down, embrace these places within us. And then, as I said, underneath, connect with this place of abundance and essence and the unlimited gifts and overflow that we are all here to experience within ourselves, that authentic self. And I would just love to think that anyone would feel free to come and participate and partake of this gift.
Thank you so much. And we have the link right down here below the video. So absolutely go to Suzi's website and get that beautiful meditation. And I'm just so grateful that you were here with us today on Mother's Day, sharing your gifts about the mothers and empowering mothers to thrive and have a good example for their kids. And thank you so much for the work you do, Suzi.
And thank you. And I so ditto and echo and send that back to you because you are doing such important work. I mean, imagine people in Australia or Germany, South Africa, all getting together here in this community that you have created. And the fact that your first one was so successful that you are now into a second one just shows how needed and appreciated this work is. So thank you for all that you do towards this.
It's definitely very needed. So together we're going to heal the world of that shadow. So thanks everybody for watching and stay tuned for the next episode of Heal the Shadow in Your Relationships Too. And thank you so much for being with us, Suzi.
My pleasure. Peace and love.